What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Is Ketel Marte the best value in Major League Baseball? And discussing some more free agents the D-backs should target this offseason.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. I'm there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we're going to be discussing the season of Ketel Marte as he has garnered a lot of attention in 2024. Some more free agent targets the D-backs should consider this offseason. And then wrapping up the podcast with a little player review, today we're going to discuss Yilber Diaz. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's get into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast and let's discuss the season of Ketel Marte because the MVP awards were just announced. And of course, Ketel Marte, the finalist, finishes third, and it just continues to his fantastic season where he has garnered so much attention, so much acclaim, so many awards, and has reestablished himself as the best second baseman, not just in the National League, but in Major League Baseball. Because when you take into his whole year, the finalist for MVP, Silver Slugger, All-Star, Gold Glove finalist, and the fact that puts the cherry on top, that makes it true that he was the best second baseman in the sport this year, first team all MLB at his position. That takes into account both leagues. Ketel Marte was considered the best second baseman in baseball by all MLB. And so you look at Marte's season and it was fantastic. The OPS, 932, 292 average. He had the home runs, he had the ribbies. And like I've been saying when discussing this MVP award race, right? The narrative we all know was going to Francisco Lindor. We know he was going to finish second behind Shohei Ohtani. Yes, he was incredible down the stretch. I agree to deliver the Mets a postseason berth. Like, I'm not going to take away anything from Francisco Lindor and what he did down the stretch because I do think he was deserving of an MVP vote, being a finalist. I just don't think he was more deserving than Ketel Marte, who was just, again, straight up better than Francisco Lindor this year. And I don't care how many times I've talked about on the podcast, Ketel Marte should have finished second MVP voting behind Shohei Ohtani. The only reason Marte didn't is, I guess, because the Mets made the postseason and the D-backs didn't. Despite them being the same team, despite them doing the same thing in the second half, yes, the D-backs collapsed down the stretch, but I would like to think if Marte played every single game, the D-backs would have missed, or the D-backs would have made the playoffs because he was doing everything Lindor was doing, but better. Across the board, traditional stats, he put up better numbers than Lindor in less games. His WAR was like 0.2 less than Lindor in like 20 less games. He had more home runs. He had more RBIs. He had almost 100 points higher on his OPS. Like, across the board, the traditional numbers crush Lindor when comparing Marte to him. And then a lot of people will bring up second half of the season, right? What Lindor did in the second half to deliver the Mets to a postseason berth. And he had a great second half. 306 average, 943 OPS in 57 games. Like, incredible. But you look at Marte in his second half, he had a 1066 OPS in 44 games. You know what else? He had 17 home runs in 44 games. Lindor had 16 home runs in 57 games. So even the point of the season where Lindor recaptured the second place MVP runner-up slot and position, right? All that kind of happened in the second half where the Mets were like always on national TV and they were always in the news. Let's just be honest. The Mets are just a team that's more well-known than the Dbacks. They're a team that's more in the news. They're just, people care about the Mets more than the Dbacks because statistically, there's not really an argument to put Lindor over Ketel Marte. And if you're going to tell me second half of the season, the Mets getting hot and all this, the D-backs were also one of the best teams in baseball in the second half of the season until the final month, yes. But if you still take the D-backs record over the last 60 games, take the D-backs record head-to-head against the Mets when they were hot, it's pretty much neck and neck, and Marte was better than Lindor in the second half of the season. So he definitely was robbed in MVP voting. And then that brings me to my second question. Is Ketel Marte the best value in baseball? And it's not, when I ask this, I'm not just taking into account guys like Corbin Carroll who are on extensions and stuff like that, but also are still have their arbitration money early and could still be on their rookie contract. I just threw this out there for guys who are on their second contract, who are not on their rookie contract, who are not arbitration eligible, of those non-guys, and also guys who didn't get extensions right off their rookie contract, right? So I want to ask if Ketel Marte is the best value in baseball for these non-arbitration, non-rookie level contract extension guys, right? Not the Corbin Carroll types or the guys who just don't fit this criteria. Only the guys who are on their second contract. Is Ketel Marte the best value in baseball? Because I think Marte actually might be. When you look at the average value of his deal in 2024, it was $15.2 million. That put him at 98th highest paid player in baseball. The guys behind Ketel Marte, Bentendi's 99, Candelario, you got I don't know, you go up and down. Seth Lugo, you could say, maybe the only guy in conversation with a Ketel Marte for these non-rookie arbitration types, right? But outside of that, the list is very, very small for guys that put up production similar to what Ketel Marte just put up in 2024. Seth Lugo was all MLB for a pitcher, so he was, he's probably in this conversation. But everyone else, you literally go on Spotrac, look at the top 200 highest paid guys, and there's really no one who's a second contract dude who is getting paid as much as Ketel Marte that is putting up the level of production Ketel Marte is. You can't find a guy $15 million or less that's putting up MVP, all MLB, first team, silver slugger numbers like Ketel Marte. That's why he is the best value in the sport. The fact that this guy is only making 15, 16 annually for the next couple years, and the fact that he's been on that, that's a 5-year deal where he's making 15 annually for a guy that could win the MVP. Yes, Ketel Marte, for his talent, his ceiling, his production, the fact that he gets paid what he does, yeah, Ketel Marte is the best value in baseball. And now we'll discuss some more free agents the D-backs should target in segment number 2. But hey, if you want to place a little wager down on an upcoming Phoenix Suns game, then the best place to do that, of course, is going to be FanDuel, because I actually went on FanDuel last night and I hit a wager because I went to the Suns versus Timberwolves game, and I'm sorry, guys, I did a same game parlay at the game, and it was not on the Phoenix Suns. I did Carl Towns, I did 25 points, I did 10 rebounds, and guys, that one hit. Threw $10 on that, doubled my money, brought a big smile to my face. And if you want a big smile on your face, please visit FanDuel.com. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. Let's get back into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, and let's discuss some free agent targets for the Dbacks this offseason, because we've been kind of going through guys every day on this podcast that the Dbacks should go after. I got a few more guys I think the Dbacks should consider this offseason. The first guy I want to discuss, he's a little bit older, but I still think he's very good. David Robertson, another Texas Rangers reliever who is available this offseason, still a guy who is very effective, very good. Is he old? Yes. Is he 39 years of age, going to be 40 by next April? Yes. But he still throws 93, 94 miles per hour. Like, he's not one of those guys topping out at 90 or 91. Like, he still throws hard enough. The strikeout number is still 12.4 strikeouts per 9. So he's still a guy that throws hard enough. He's still a guy that racks up a ton of Ks. Still a guy that can finish some games for you if you need to. He's not a closer anymore at this point of his career, but if you need him to be a spot closer, you can definitely do that. But I like him more as a setup man, maybe seventh inning guy. Again, he is 40 years old. So if it's Martinez, Puck, David Robertson as like your 9-8-7 combination, the back end of your bullpen, like, I would love that if I'm the Arizona Diamondbacks. Robertson has been one of the best relievers since 2008 when he broke on with the New York Yankees, a career 2.91 ERA over 16 seasons. And despite his advanced age, David Robertson is still one of the better relievers in baseball, still a strikeout machine. Maybe he gives up. Maybe his walk rate is like a tad too high, but just a tad. It really isn't that crazy at all. And considering the K rate he has with it, I think David Robertson is still a dude who's fantastic, doesn't give up a ton of contact overall, and the hard contact allowed is pretty solid as well. So David Robertson is someone that I would love in some Sedona Red. Next up is a guy that feels very D-back-ish, actually. I don't know why, but I kind of think this guy could be a D-back. He's a little bit older, kind of in the decline of his career, but I think he's actually at the perfect point of his career to sign with the D-backs. Aroldis Chapman. I think he could be interesting. A 37-year-old guy who throws super hard, who's a little bit past his prime. Like, this kind of feels like a D-back run all over him, because the D-backs don't get these guys in their prime. They get these guys when they're a little bit over the hill, and I think Chapman could have enough in the tank to still deliver for the D-backs as a high-leverage back-end reliever. Maybe not the most important reliever, but if he's like the third or fourth D-backs reliever, maybe behind like a Kevin Ginkel, if he's like the fourth reliever coming in and just throwing flames, I would like that. He definitely was a little up and down with Pittsburgh because his command has turned into a problem. 3.79 ERA last year, 5.7 walks per 9. Like, that's his problem. He gives up way too many walks, but Aroldis Chapman is still someone that could go in and ratchet up the fastball. He's still someone that throws super hard. Sinker last year still averaged 99.8 miles per hour, still averages 98 on the fastball. If you're still talking about high velocity reliever, Aroldis Chapman is still one of the best. Saved 14 games last year with the Pirates. Again, Chapman, probably at this point of his career, I don't think I want him as a closer. I don't think I want to go through the roller coaster ride that we saw the Yankees go through those last couple years, where his numbers are still solid, but game to game, you just don't have that confidence in Chapman to get the job done. And so Chapman is someone that I would love to bring into Arizona this year, but if we're asking him to be the everyday D-backs closer, I'm probably not a fan. But if it's more like a closer by committee with Martinez and Puck, I do think I'm a fan of that. But if anything, make him like the fourth reliever battling with Kevin Ginkel, like the lefty version of Kevin Ginkel. I think I would love that for Aroldis Chapman. Still a big dude who throws super hard, still someone that I would be super interested in. And because he's a little bit over the hill, I actually think he could be a perfect guy for the D-backs. Next up, speaking of players who's over the hill, this is kind of like the old man segment of the podcast when we're discussing free agents today, because we've done like free agent discussions where it's like very reliever heavy, maybe it's very DH heavy. Well, today's like more veteran heavy because the next guy is Carlos Santana of the D-backs. first baseman Christian Walker leaves in free agency, we're going to need a contingency plan. I'm not telling you Carlos Santana is my favorite option, but of all the free agent options at first base out there with Goldie and Josh Bell, like, I wouldn't mind Santana. I guess Goldie would be number one, but Santana actually had a pretty solid season last year, maybe even better than Goldie. It's right there, 23 home runs in 150 games, 750 OPS, really solid defense, actually won a Gold Glove this past year, so it's like, he could give us some of the production that Christian Walker gave us with the defense and the power. It's just that Carlos Santana is going to be 39 years of age, so I don't know how much left he has in the tank. Probably at least enough for one more year, but also for signing Carlos Santana, he might be someone that we need to sign and bring in like another first baseman. Like, he's a switch hitter. Like, maybe we're platooning with switch hitter Josh Bell and we just go with the hot hand. Like, Santana at this point of his career, pretty advanced age, so I don't know how consistent that bat is going to be game to game. Carlos Santana was a really good player in his prime with the Cleveland Guardians for a very, very long time. Like, he will be Hall of Fame eligible one day when he retires, and he's still a dude that produces even late in his career. But is he a guy that could be an everyday first baseman for you? I mean, he was this past season. The hard contact stats are still pretty solid. He still has a pretty good walk rate, doesn't strike out a ton. So all the smart, advanced analytics tell you Carlos Santana is still good enough to be an everyday first baseman for at least one more year. So I wouldn't mind the D-backs bringing him in. But also, if you do, maybe also have a second contingency plan ready just in case, considering he is a little bit more of a veteran than some other veterans out there. Then the last old man that I want to discuss that I think the D-backs should consider is Ketel Marte. He was on the Boston Red Sox this past year, and he's been a very good reliever the last few years. He's just a guy that doesn't pitch a ton of innings because he deals with injuries at times, but when he does pitch, he's really, really good. Also a guy that can rack up the strikeouts, double-digit strikeouts per nine the last couple years. Is he a dude that's a little old? Yes, like all these guys we're talking about today, he is 38 years of age. So again, if that is a concern for you, I don't disagree, because with age comes a lack of velocity, comes more of a decline. So if the age is something that concerns you, I get it. But he's still someone that throws in the mid-90s. Fastball averaged 94.7 miles per hour last year. Cutter still low 90s. So if he can still hit 94, 95 on his fastball with his other stuff like his split finger, which was not the most effective pitch last season, but his cutter and four-seamer definitely were. Ketel Marte is still someone that is very good. And the best part about Ketel Marte, he gives up a good amount of hits, a good amount of contact. Like, he's not afraid of that, but at least he strikes out and does not give up walks. 1.7% walk rate last year with almost a 28% K rate. You could definitely have that with very low hard contact stats as well. Ketel Marte, I think, could be a perfect third reliever for the D-backs next year, behind Justin Martinez, behind AJ Puck. You add a Ketel Marte in the mix, and now this D-backs bullpen is cooking. And one guy that could potentially help the D-backs bullpen next year cook is Yilber Diaz, as we'll do his play review in segment number 3. But hey, if you're looking to buy tickets to an upcoming Phoenix Suns or Arizona Cardinals game, then the best place to do that, of course, is going to be Game Time, because Game Time is the best place for last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They have this feature called All-In Pricing. When you toggle that feature on, it shows you your total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. They even have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account or redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, and let's discuss Yilber Diaz and the season he just had with the D-backs. But first, I want to quickly mention a guy I ran into last night, because I was at the Phoenix Suns versus Wolves game, like I mentioned, because I bet on Karl Towns to get 25 and 10. that little parlay hit for me. Thank you to my friends at FanDuel. But I was walking around the concourse, walking in to my seat. You know who just walks right by me in front of my face? The boy, Alec Thomas. Now, I was sober at that time. I was with my friend. They didn't even know who he was. Of course, I was locked in. I was geeked as he walked past me. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to fanboy right now. Let me be professional. But then, during the game, had me a nice kilt lifter. I couldn't think of the name. Had me a nice Four Peaks kilt lifter IPA. Drank me the tall boy as I was walking out the stadium. Guess who's walking by me again? Alec Thomas. So you know what I had to do? Yo, AT, what's up? Walked by, dapped up my guy, kept it moving, kept it professional. But guess what? Haven't washed my hand since then. So just cool to run to Alec Thomas last night. A few days after I did a podcast saying, let's keep Jake McCarthy, let's trade Alec Thomas, but still a super, super chill guy. So just want to mention that to y'all. I thought you guys would find that interesting. But let's get back into the podcast. And now let's discuss Yilber Diaz and the season he just had with the Dbacks in 2024, because I think Yilber Diaz surprised a lot of people this past year. I don't think he was on the radar for a lot of people. He was definitely not on my radar entering 2024, because I don't think anyone really expected Yilber Diaz to have any kind of an impact. Enter the season as the 28th best prospect according to MLB Pipeline. And now the season ends. He's number 6 on the list because of the season he just had, where he came in. It was actually an effective piece for the Dbacks. 28 innings pitch, a 3.81 ERA. Are there underlying numbers that give you concern and pause? Yes, because like a lot of these Dbacks pitchers with the Ryan Nelsons and the Bryce Jarvis and the Slade Ciccone and the Dre Jameson, all these guys who come in that first year put up good numbers, there's always concern with these guys. But there's a reason why Yilber Diaz, despite those concerns, moved up so much in the prospect rankings, because he definitely flashed and showed a lot. And now we're thinking if Yilber Diaz can work on some of those issues he had, this is someone that could definitely be an impact piece for the D-backs, either out the bullpen or maybe down the line as like a back-end starter. But I probably see him more as a bullpen guy. I think Yilber Diaz is someone that is very intriguing entering next year. As a starter, probably not. As a reliever, I do like him. His fastball was hit way too much last year, a 301 average and a 521 slugging allowed on his fastball. But what I do like, fastball averaged 96 miles per hour, and off his fastball, his slider was dominant. A 130 average allowed, a 174 slugging allowed. His knuckle curve was also good. If he can improve his fastball with the 2 secondary pitches he has, he can be a very, very good reliever for the D-backs. And that's why I'm in on Yilber Diaz as a potential spot starter, long reliever type for the D-backs, be the D-backs' potential last reliever or second to last reliever in the bullpen next year. I think he has the chops to do it. When looking at the numbers, this was a guy whose splits were pretty even. Were they great against righties or lefties? No, but they were at least even. 773 OPS to righties, 730 OPS allowed to lefties. And so at least you could say there's not really a weakness against either one. Being a righty pitcher, the fact that it's worse against right-handed batters lets me at least believe that maybe those numbers will come down and start to regress to the mean. And really, when looking at the numbers for Yilber Diaz, one thing that's like pretty jarring, the numbers on the road were horrendous, and it actually blew up his ERA. At home this year for the D-backs, 23.2 innings pitched, 5 outings, only 5 earned runs. He had a 1.9 ERA at home. But on the road, 2 outings, 4.2 innings pitched, 7 earned runs. That's a 13.5 ERA. That's what blew up his ERA. And so for next year, is he just a guy that's only good at Chase Field, or can he balance out those splits a little bit? Because the sample size at home shows that he was a pretty good pitcher, but then why did he get so bad on the road? Was he just not comfortable? Could he not get into a routine? Like, let's figure out why that is, because there are some underlying numbers, like when you look at what he does with runners in scoring position and like clutch moments, that show you that this guy has some backbone, and this is a guy that could definitely step up in more high leverage, high pressurized situations, and that's why we think he could potentially be a good reliever. You look at his numbers with runners in scoring position last year, 188 average, and a 545 OPS allowed. Like, those are really strong, fantastic numbers for a young rookie who doesn't have a lot of tape, who might not have that level of confidence early in his major league career. Mow down dudes with runners in scoring position. Like, you'd love to see that. High leverage moments, again, another 188 average and a 610 OPS. So, like, runners in scoring position, high leverage moments, all these clutch situations he was really good at. And so for Yilber Diaz entering 2025, like, this is someone that I do want to see in spring training, in the offseason. Give him as much run as possible. This is someone that should be fighting for one of those bullpen spots entering camp. And I want to see if he can make this roster next year, because I think Yilber Diaz has a ton of talent and can be an impact player for the D-backs in 2025. And even if he doesn't start this season with Arizona next year, there could definitely be an injury like there was this past season. So get him in AAA, make him one of the top starters, get him as much opportunity as possible, keep him fresh, keep him developing, and then when he does get that call up to the big leagues, he can come up immediately and help the D-backs out from day one. So Yilber Diaz is definitely my X factors to watch for the D-backs in 2025. That's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage. Or not tomorrow, come back next week for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. House says.